Thank you very much for your attention. Until now, we discussed a lot of interesting things. And now what I would like to do is really to dive a little bit more in these 4 use cases that we developed in the course of this project for the digitization of these heritage collections. I would like to invite already on stage Vincent and Panayiotis, because you will be the first speakers, and then we have the other 2. And now, okay, so can you hear me? Yes. So my name is Valentina Bachi, and I am from Photoconsortium, which now you know I was the coordinator of this very exciting project. We already heard from other speakers how the 3D digitization offers new ways to innovate workflows in cultural heritage, so to create more advanced heritage collections, as we did until now, that represent not only the cultural object, but also the story and memories that are associated with them. But cultural heritage is really, a very vast concept. It includes from entire archaeological sites to monuments and to very small objects in museums and controlled environment. And even if in the project we have 4 content providers, they represent really this variety. And we will hear from all of them the stories of their journey in this new 3D digitization and 3D management and sharing to Europeana. And I will present the 4 colleagues who will tell their stories. And after we heard the stories from each of them, we will have some reflection on this experience in the context of the project, particularly what we thought about the reuse of these 3D assets in Europeana and in the Common European Data Space for Cultural Heritage, and some reflections about the impact that we had in the project and we envisage to have for the continuation of this project, and also some reflections about sustainability. So the first speaker, I will give the floor to you in a moment, is Vincent Guichard, who is the General Director of Bibracte. So Vincent, as you prefer, you can come here and move the slides.
Possibly, it will be more comfortable, yes.
Okay. Please. And unfortunately, we have to be quicker, 10 minutes.
Okay, so no problem. I will speak very fast in that case. Okay, so I'm the archaeologist, or Bibracte is the archaeologist of the consortium of EUreka3D. I must warn you that I used to be an archaeologist in a former life. I'm absolutely not a specialist of digital technology, so don't ask technical questions. I will not be able to answer the questions. Okay, and so I prepared this presentation with 2 colleagues who are involved in EUreka3D. Agathe, who is around, and so in charge of digital mediation, so she may explain you what it is about. And Sebastian, who is not around today, who used to be employed by Bibracte for publications issues, and now his position has changed to digital strategy, because it's very important for us to include publication and strategy within a broader digital strategy. Okay, so just 2 slides to present the site, which is the case study to implement EUreka3D and 3D images. So we are dealing with a very big archaeological site. Okay, so the 1st century BC. It's bringing together universities from all over Europe for more than 40 years. And we saw with a lot of excavation in the 19th century. So it's a very long history of archaeology. That means, well, we've got very large and very diverse archaeological archives. So a sample of documentation, which is very representative of what we can deal with in terms of archaeology. A lot of paperwork, analogic photographs, especially for the 19th century, but also for the late 20th century, and more digital contents. That's the diversity is increasing every year. So, and it's quite big. And for just our database of images has got nearly 105,000 images. So it's not big data, but it's medium-sized data, I would say. And so we are very lucky to be able to manage the whole archaeological process from prospection, excavation, documentation in the field, documentation in the laboratories, publication for the scientific community, and also preparing the archive for the scientific community of tomorrow. And we have to keep for long archives without any limitation of duration, and also to prepare contents for the visitors today in the museum, on the archaeological site, and on the web, and also for the future. So we've put in Europeana 3 collections of data just to try to check different types of collections or archaeological objects, of course. They are not all very exciting, but they are all in the display cases of the museum. We haven't got the equivalent of La Joconde in our museum. I've never excavated any extraordinary object like this one. 3D models, and of course, field recording scenes. Okay, so very briefly, the objects. So we scan 130 objects. So with a very standard, as far as I can say, digital device, industrial device, and the scanning of the process and the preparation of the files was 5 months of full work for the operator. But on top of that, there was a lot of work to prepare the metadata. So it's not counted, I must say, because when we prepare data, we take the advantage of that to clean data which are not clean, so it's never finished. Okay, so that's it. I don't think there was further. So typological models. I think we took the opportunity of a recent publication of the typology of pottery of Bibracte, for which we designed, the typology was the opportunity to design 3D models for future uses of these models, just for machine-driven identification of potsherds. So it's technically possible. The proof of concept has been done, but it's not implemented as a routine for us. But we are working on that. And these 3D models are connected to paradata, as Marino said, which are very important, including just a very precise description of these types and correspondence in other typologies, which is published on the web, but not directly connected with the Europeana database at the moment, because it was not technically possible. And field scenes, so a few full 3D models, usually made from photogrammetry with a drone in most cases. I must say we don't make so many models, 3D models, because it takes a lot of time and it needs a lot of storage capacity. And we keep that for complex scenes. So for example, I've put here a very complex excavation on the fortifications of Bibracte because it was a very steep slope. There are several phases of fortification, and of course the 3D image I think is very relevant in that case. And but much more commonly we use what I would call 2D plus images files. So that means photogrammetric restitutions of orthophotographic restitutions of photogrammetries. It's 2D plus. Why? Because usually we use that for research just to as a site recording, and the recording of the vertical faces, like the facing of the walls, is not made systematically, but we've got the Z coordinates for every point which is recorded. And that we do that on a daily basis on the sites today. So it's much more convenient, and the space required for recording is much smaller than 3D, than full 3D. So if I go back to this image, one second, I'm very skeptical about the use that end users of Europeana can do of these images today. The typology, I think the main use in the future will be by specialists who will be happy just to have these models to compare their finds on their sites with ours in Bibracte. Objects, they are just bits and pieces, and the narrative, if there's no narrative to explain this object, this is an iron trowel. Well, okay, it's an iron trowel. It doesn't talk so much to me. And the field scene, once again, you have to explain the context, the excavation, the surroundings, all this paradata, all these pieces of narrative. So it's clear that we put on our Europeana all these contents, but is it relevant to put this kind of content on Europeana? I'm extremely skeptical at the moment. It's not enough anyway. So we have to get further. Another aspect of what we did, and it wasn't expected to go in this direction when we started EUreka3D, but actually we realized that another initiative had been taken by a group of colleagues in French research, especially in archaeology, to develop standards for the recording of 3D models. And so they developed a repository and a data hub on their side, and they were very keen to come and to play with the EUreka3D community without being given back any single euro. So we were very happy of that, and they are still. And so instead of putting our data directly into the hub, we made it a little more tricky way. So we put our data on the French hub, and we developed the software to connect the two hubs. Eventually, it has worked, not so easily, but the last images were sent to Valentina yesterday, just to tell you. And okay, and so what it is interesting for us is that actually the list of data of metadata on the French Conservatory is much more extended than the one in Europeana, and especially for reuse by scientists for research. And also, so that's the connection of different databases is extremely interesting. For example, as much as possible, and it is part of another project we are developing in Bibracte to produce a new kind of information system for archaeology. We can connect the data to other data like periodo, for the dating period, geonames, of course, for the location where the objects comes, for example, the name of the producers with the VIAF register and so on, and of course, all this organized vocabularies, thesaurus, and so that's for us is a very important aspect to use structured vocabularies. Just for example, so we've input in GeoNames database all the places we've excavated in Bibracte. So it's really the granularity is very fine for this information, and all the objects have been tagged with this GeoName. So you can, and from that you can go to the excavation, and then to the name of the excavator, and then to the date of the excavation, and then the whole database of recording of the excavation. And in terms of, okay, so say just putting on raw materials on Europeana is not enough. So we've tested, and that was I guess, job to make some kind of editorialization of the data. And I must say that Europeana and Historiana provide very useful tools because they are very simple to use. They have got a very good visibility on the web, so it's quite exciting for us. So, for example, galleries, and we started editing stories in Europeana, and so we have another project about producing pedagogical material against the looting of archaeological finds, and we brought some objects in the stories we produced there, and it's costless for an organization like us to use these tools, so that's really fantastic. So the future goals for us, So once again, we have to provide more information about the context of the images we put on these databases. I think that's the basic task of archaeologists. We want to add new files. So you've seen we've got 150,000 photograph records. Of course, we won't pollute too much Europeana by putting there too much. But we have to make selections and to have a strategy. Maybe we can build it with you. So that these 3D models, I think the possibility to share 3D models of archaeological objects from different sites, I think is very interesting for us and for machine-driven shape recognition. And so it's really, it will be a major advance for archaeology when it has become a routine. And we are working on that subject, especially with a colleague who is teaching in a university in Paris. So using the media, and of course we hope with EUreka3D XR that we will be able to develop other medias. And also something, it's my last slide, something I just was adding this morning. Another big concern is the environmental impact of all that. Because, okay, so storing capacities we need is huge. So that means it uses a lot of rare raw materials. And the computing is using a lot of energy. And I'm absolutely not clear at all in my mind with the balance between our wish to share a lot and to use more the digital technologies for tasks. And I would say just for archaeology, new digital technologies open fantastic perspectives. But if we need to beat a nuclear weapon close to Bibracte, nuclear plant next to Bibracte to produce the electricity we need, it won't be possible, and it won't be acceptable. And it's a challenge, and I think we are not very clear at all about that, the whole community. Okay, so that's it. I won't go further.
Thank you very much. Yes, thank you, Vincent. And I think your presentation also raised some interesting challenges. And perhaps Jolan will also explain a bit more and react about Europeana. Now I would like to give the floor to Panayiotis. He is a PhD researcher at the Cyprus University of Technology. And I think you are also going to explain very interesting stories. Please, Panayiotis, 10 minutes.
So this is the first a monument that we managed to digitize in Cyprus University of Technology for EUreka3D. This is the Lambusa fishing trawler. It was built in 1955 in Piraeus, and it was used for fishing up until 2004. So in 2004, it stopped functioning, and it remained vacant. As you can see on this image, it was in a really bad condition. Then the restoration works began from the municipality of Cyprus. So in this project, we digitized this fishing boat before its restoration. So we wanted to capture how it looked like in a vacant condition through photogrammetry, but also we used terrestrial laser scanning to capture the point cloud data during reconstruction. Because during the restoration works, as you can see, we managed to get also the timber structure. And here is how it is restored, but also we digitized it 3 times on the before restoration, during restoration, and after it was restored, to also get the deviation, how it was before and after the conservation. Obviously, we used the Vici study to capture the paradata. On the left, you can see the complexity pie chart, starting with the stakeholder requirements. The digitization started from May 2022 and ended, the photogrammetry and terrestrial laser scanning ended in 2023, but obviously we had to post-process it to create the 3D CAD model, which you're going to see in the next slides. Also, we had to justify the object and the project. The object was in decay, had the pine wood material, eucalyptus, metal, the location, the dimensions. It was in collaboration with the coordinator, the Limassol municipality. Also the deliverables data, we wanted to get up to 1 centimeter deviation, the formats, and also the environmental conditions, because we went there 2 time periods. The first one was for the UAV photogrammetry, as you before it was restored. It was in January 2023. But we also visited for terrestrial laser scanning on October 2023. As you can see, here are the environmental conditions, and here is the complexity of the conditions. So all these correspond to the VG study. And it's essential to take this into account, because this justifies the further complexity of the digitization. Here, I hope it's going to play. Doesn't play? Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, there's a video here. I don't know why. Yeah, I don't know why it's not playing, but okay. So here you can see. This is the photogrammetric process. You can see the amount of images. We're talking about 1,100 images. And also you can see the place where this was initially digitized. It was in a shipyard. So the conditions were really difficult conditions, in a shipyard. We had to remove all this plastic, was covered with plastic. You can see the neighboring existing vessels. So we had to take some close-up images, narrow areas here. So you can see the amount of complexity for the first UAV photogrammetric digitization. Okay. So we used the DJI Mini 3 Pro and a Sony camera and reality capture for the photogrammetry. But also these are the details for the terrestrial laser scanning. We just used 9 positions because we wanted to get this area here of the structure, mainly this structure, and then some on the front as well. This is the result of the point cloud from the terrestrial laser scanning. And this is the combined point cloud from the, as you can see on the left, is the terrestrial laser scanning. On the right is the photogrammetric model. So we had to align these two to be able to post-process it to create a clean 3D CAD model. So we post-process it in Cloud Compare. This is the mesh geometry. We are talking about 27 million faces. So we had to reduce all this data also to be available for the end users, but also for web as well. So we had to sample the points from the mesh. We reduced them to 5 billion points. And then we used this method. We sliced the point cloud, and according to the point cloud slices, we created this network of curves, waterline and vertical nerves to create the hull geometry of the boat. Here you can see how it was downsampled. So you can, from number 1 and 1 and 3, you can see the difference of how the data had to be reduced to be able to be available for end users. And on this diagram, you can see clearly see the raw data, how the raw data was the number of points, and then how they were post-processed, and then the CAD model, and also for web. So you can see the difference of the size used as a raw data for the OBJ and for the CAD model. These are all the components, the materials. And finally, I will show you the other objects. This is the Holy Cross, another monument from 14th century. We also use terrestrial laser scanning and photogrammetry. Here we use Revit to create the H-beam geometry. So we had to trace over the geometry on the point cloud. You can see the amount of detail that we created. This is the site plan from the Revit model, the ground floor plan, and the sections that you can see also all the frescoes and the iconostasis from the interior photogrammetry as well, and the exterior H-beam model with the texture. And here is the other object, the other monument that we digitized, Christoriadisa Monastery, 18th century, again with terrestrial laser scanning and UAV. These are the amount of positions that we had to put the laser scanner. It's a very complex monument, so it's a huge amount of point cloud that we need to post-process. Again, with similar methods that I showed previously. And this is the result of the H-beam model. And also, we did an additional aggregation to Europeana because in January 2024, Marinos with students from CUT and myself, I was in Cyprus post-processing all the raw data, the images of 30 artifacts, Cypriot artifacts from Medelhavsmuseet in Stockholm, Sweden. And 2 of these were aggregated through the EUreka3D workflow. These are how it looks in Europeana. Yeah, and so yeah, that's the end of my presentation.
Perfect.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks very much, and I think it shows really how digitizing a site or a boat is a totally different story. I would like to invite on stage already the other 2 speakers. The first is David. I don't think I need to introduce you, so the floor is yours.
Thank you. Okay, hello again. I will explain the use case of the CRDI, the Center for Image Research and Dissemination of the Girona City Council. And for this project, we focus on the collection of the Cinema Museum in Girona. And this is a very important collection in Europe of press cinema and early cinema. And if you go and you visit the museum, you have the opportunity, it's 10 minutes walking from here. You will realize that you have the opportunity to have a look at the objects, but also there is an experience related to the object. As you can see in the slide, if you look on my first, if you look on my right hand, there is a lantern magic that is a phantasmagory. And this was used for an immersive experience because people were closed in a room, in the darkness, with the smoke, with noise, and then the projection was phantom and all these kind of things moving. So it was an scaring experience. And if you look at the other side, you see people looking at these halls that is a stereoscopic viewer. So they were able to see images in 3D. So what I mean with this is that nothing is completely new. And now that we are in this process of creating 3D and this experience, these virtual experiences, it's good to keep in mind that there is this something that was created before, that is our culture, visual culture, and that helps to understand that how the technology is used today and how we are as users of this technology. So in a project like this, as mentioned before, we try to do both, to digitize the objects in the best way and to make them accessible, but also to bring all this knowledge at the same time in order to have an understanding of all this. So for this project, we selected 50 objects, because it must be said that it's very important that EUreka3D decided to include audiovisual objects for this. All are fascinated with the heritage, with buildings, sites, etc. But these small objects are very meaningful for our culture. So it was good to consider this. And the Cinema Museo, they selected this, and you have here some examples. Magic lanterns are the most known, but there are other like philoscopes, motoscopes, that it was this technology used individually at the beginning of the cinema, when the cinema already existed, but there was this personal experience with all these devices. And other devices related to projection, but also capturing, viewing, animation, illusions, visual tricks, all this that is related to this collection. So the question is always, why 3D digitization? Because we have these objects, and it's obvious they are volumetric, and we have an understanding, a better understanding, and even if Vincent is skeptical with this, we all are at the beginning, but we need to explore and see the possibilities. And there is something very important, that is all these document records related to this. We cannot isolate the objects. If we want to explain what is the function of what it was in the past, we need also to consider all the archive, because archive is not for hidden objects. Archive is something open to explore. So archive, we have this function of preservation, but I think what it's really important to consider is we have this function to make it possible, the discovery. I like this word, because when you go to archive, you discover. I don't know if you ever spend some time, for example, looking at portrait collection. That is something we are very familiar with this, but if you discover this collection, you will get an experience from this. So there are narratives, and we create new narratives, and from these narratives, other narratives are created. So it's never-ending story. So archives are really fundamental for all this understanding. So when we digitize this, we digitize all this. What our aim is also the possibility to offer discovery, knowledge, experimentation, creation. And besides, of course, the research, the entertainment also. We sometimes focus a lot of entertainment, but it's not the main thing, but it's also something to consider. And when you focus on this object, and when you start digitizing, there are challenges there, mainly at the beginning. We started with limited knowledge on 3D, it's obvious. And we need to do this work. So the challenge is to achieve high quality. It's not 3D digitization, because everybody can digitize an object and get a 3D, but high quality. Making content accessible. You can sign in. Sketchfab is accessible, but it's not what we are looking for in cultural institutions. And then preserve. You can preserve in your mobile, of course, in your PC, in your computer, but you know the time is limited. So you need to think in these issues, and in this case, file formats, paradata, what we talked before, are fundamental. So we start with this challenge, and first thing is who digitize all these objects, and we call for a tender. We are used to this as a public body, but we need to give some instruction. What is the methodology? What is the standard for this? And there is one, that is this Bibracte study, mentioned many times, but is what make it possible to work in high-level digitization. and what make it possible for us, for cultural institutions, to communicate with companies, private companies, etc., who work on this, and to explain them what we are looking for. In our case, La Tempesta Media did the work. They won the call, the tender. They are sitting here, so if you have technical questions, I cannot answer, as Vincent said, but Mark and Paul can do this. So they did the work with very good results. And then also related to the methodology, we need to focus on the analysis of quality and complexity. It's been mentioned before, but we focus very much on the complexity of the objects, because these objects have lens, mirrors, metals, glasses, so everything is challenging. So in this case, Nila Petit, who is a technician at Municipal Archive in Girona, and who is also a restorer, she did this analysis with very detailed information, and this is part of the paradata that give us information about the process. We also have the information provided by La Tempesta about capturing. These objects are captured using photogrammetry technique, and is a complete process with different steps, and this is gathered in the paradata. So this is also explained there, not just the capturing, also the edition and the final results with all the different formats that you have from the still images, 3D, different versions, etc. Then you need somewhere to publish this, and the Data Hub, Nacho explained it, the Data Hub developed during this project. So we had this service, we had the Data Hub, and you see it's 1.5 terabyte, thousands of files. So for 50 objects, you have this need of an infrastructure for 3D with a viewer located at the same place, etc. So we have this, and also the possibility using this, that when someone goes to Europeana, they can go not just to the viewer and see the object, but also go to the project and see all the masters, all the images. There are these possibilities, and this Data Hub offers this possibility. So it's not just looking at 3D, but someone is interested in the whole project, and this is open. So this is what EGI did and Cyfronet, and this is something to consider. Metadata, of course, for publishing, we know how it works. We know that at the end we need EDM. We enrich this using vocabularies as we used to do. And then paradata again. But we have the technical report from La Tempesta Media with all the technical information. We provide also information, for example, the objects. And then we create a report following the instructions of CUT with this standard for paradata that we adapt in the best way. And from here, everything, our Buddha goes to Europeana, for example, in this case, the magic lantern. And so the lessons learned from all this process is that 3D digitization is a scientific approach, that you need an understanding of your collection. That is essential, because what is really amazing is that we have this collection that a man in the 60s, 70s traveled around the world with a criteria to select the objects that explain this part of our history. And then the next point is the reusability. We have this now, how we reuse this, but this is another discussion. So just to finish, our case study, I think it explains very well what the project offers, because it offers the possibility to understand how to digitize high quality. It offers an infrastructure when you have everything there to explode, use all these, make it accessible, preserve, etc. And it gives you the possibility to preserve, because there are partners involved with a scientific background that make us believe that this infrastructure is trusted. So this is what a competence center of 3D is. So every institution that is interested in a project like this, they have a competence center. We look like this. There is the service. Antonella mentioned this. So all is complete, and we are users of this. And this is the good news of this story. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And I think something that so is the work you mentioned about representation is the collaboration of public institutions with private organizations and companies on the territory. That is also something that is triggered by the digitization. And a similar case is now to be explained by Massimiliano, who will tell us a bit more about this specific collections that you have and the stories of your journey you will be. So 10 minutes.
See, thank you, Valentina. I know that we have to run. Okay, so the things to talk is many. So the Piscia Paper Museum has a particular collection. So that is paper goods. Paper goods is watermark and molds and very special documents in our archive. So this, for us, this is the first time that we a project like this. But the point is, this is the part of a deep research on these goods. Okay, that is the tools that men use in the past producing handmade paper. That is the basis of our culture or identity. Okay, so the collection is a part of a private donation, and the document that is 700 linear meters of documents inside the museum. So in this project, we made 2 3D models and 5,000 2D this digitization of document. Okay, this is the our role in the project, and so we began in 2008 to catalog these tools, and this is the first time that we catalog the tool like this in Italy, but also in Europe too. And so that is the watermark paper was a very special object, you see, with a watermark on, and so which is the molds are made of wooden frame and metal sheet on which the watermark was sewn with silvered copper wire. So it's very, very particular. And so we inventory and catalog the paper good, and an experimental for us, the EUreka3D project was an experimental part, because this the first time that we made this part of the project, and also we, as I say, we have documents in our archive that is 700 linear meters of documentation that we save in 2016, so it is an archive that we have to study and tells 1 million of stories related to our collection, but not only. And so the choice fell on the watermark paper mold with the images of Napoleon and Maria Luisa d'Austria made in 1812, and the watermark paper mold with the image of an anchor and the letter ES made in 1923, and with what used to create paper for the first edition of Porto Sepolto by Giuseppe Ungaretti. So that is a part of a research, because the next year we have an exhibition that is for us the end of this process, because we studied watermark paper mold, we reconstruct the history around the paper mold, we make the 3D model. So next year we are invited to an exhibition in Pescia Paper Museum to see all this material that we have, but also the Porto Sepolto by Giuseppe Ungaretti too. And so you see some particular of the paper molds and watermark on. And so this is the process of digitization of the paper mold. And so we have the online catalog on the website of the museum, and also we have linked with the 3D model on the Europeana portal, so they are linked, and so you can see the 3D model, and also the documents that we digitize in 2D, obviously, and these are particularly the technique that we use to digitize the documents. I run because we have a short video at the end, so if you have 2 minutes, I think we can. And so the digitization activities were carried out respecting both the equipment and the procedure, the quality standards required for the preservation of the paper originals, obviously. So all these documents are on the Europeana portal, but with other found, private and public found, the museum make a ad hoc platform to store the documents, and so that we developed in 2012 and 23 with the company Lunet di Lucenza in Lucca, and so for a more careful analysis of the platform. This is a problem that we found in our process in relation with the need to transfer it to Europeana and the needs of interoperability with the SAN, that is our national archive system of the Ministry of Culture, Italian Ministry of Culture. We need to make significant change to the platform itself also emerges. So we need other funds, private and public funds, so we improve our platform and possible to review and update the platform following the indication given by support of Europeana, and a special thanks to Valentina and to Antonella and the Italian Ministry of Culture, and does obtain full interoperability of our system. So you see all the documents are in our platform and in Europeana too. And when you see the documents in the Europeana platform, you link it in our platform to visit, okay? And so the videos part that was allowed on the basis of significant funding from the European Commission to activate further collaboration. This is, for me, as the other part important of this project, that is to found public and private fund, but also activate other collaboration. And yeah, okay. So the goal is sharing an innovative experience for us, but everything around paper goods are innovative because nobody knows in this moment are very neglected. In this moment, it is a particular kind of heritage. So we make 2 3D models of the market paper molds for the first time. So we have the international visibility for the museum collection and the dissemination of Museo cultural age thanks to Europeana platform. And I hope in the future that we can also collaborate it. So if I have, but I don't know, Valentina tells me. You make a link.
No, because I have to download it, upload the presentation there.
Okay, so I don't know because it was okay. So it's a part of the material that we produce and we made on the EUreka3D channel.
Yeah, perhaps we can show the first part.
Oh, okay. It's I don't know if you have 2 or 3 minutes. Il progetto EUreka3D, finanziato dalla Comunità Europea, ha permesso di digitalizzare una serie di fondi archivistici conservati nell'archivio storico Magnani del Museo della Carta di Pescia, uno degli archivi d'impresa più importanti d'Italia con i suoi 700 metri lineari di documentazione. In particolare ci siamo concentrati sul fondo dei copialettere, che è un fondo raramente presente negli archivi d'impresa, perché rappresenta copia di tutte le lettere spedite nel corso dei secoli dall'impresa stessa e che quindi permette di avere un rapporto diretto tra quello che era la corrispondenza in entrata e la corrispondenza in uscita. Il progetto ha permesso inoltre di realizzare l'oggetto virtuale di 2 forme da carta filigranate tramite la ripresa tridimensionale. Ci siamo concentrati sulla forma da carta con le immagini di Napoleone Bonaparte e Maria Luisa d'Austria, realizzata nel 1812, e quella realizzata nel 1923 per creare carta utile alla prima edizione del Porto Sepolto di Giuseppe Ungaretti. Abbiamo proceduto nella scelta di questi pezzi archivistici e di queste forme da carta poiché troviamo all'interno dei documenti informazioni storiche sui 2 oggetti tridimensionali che verranno realizzati. Il progetto permetterà di porre le basi anche per la futura ricerca scientifica.
I think was useful to really see what are these objects that you prepared for the project and which are really a peculiar type of heritage. Unfortunately, we must run, so thank you very much to you and to David for your presentation. Yeah, and I would like to invite on the table Jolan Wuyts from Europeana and John Balean, Photoconsortium and Top Photo. But I am aware, Jolan, that there is a question from the audience. And perhaps before we start your presentation, we can address the question that we received, I think, on the chat. So, Elena?
Yes, can you hear me? Yes, okay. Thank you, Valentina. So on the YouTube chat, we have a couple of questions from Sebastian Terburg from Europeana. And I think then they can be addressed by any of the 4 case studies presenters. I will read them loud and then you can address them. The first one goes, does the skepticism about the reuse by individuals have any influence on what will be shared or how it will be shared? Use cases can never be predicted, so skepticism might not be a good filter. This is the first question and comment. Then the second one, considering the difficulty of digitization, do the speakers think that this expertise will be developed in institutions mostly, or will this be external organizations supporting institutions?
Okay, so those are the 2 questions. Okay, great. I think the first one is really interesting, this kind of tension between skepticism around making things available and the need for making things available even though you don't really know what the reuse cases or the use cases will be in the future. I think one of the lessons we learned in the EUreka3D project is that the why of why you digitize something always needs to have at least some use cases or reuse cases in mind. You don't digitize just to digitize or just because you have the money or the want to do this. Having a vision in mind of what possible reuse cases are there is already a really good indication. This, of course, doesn't mean that the same digitization can't then be reused for other use cases that we might not be even able to imagine now or in the future. Marino's highlighted and Frederick as well, how AI will really transform the way that we look and reuse cultural heritage in the future. So it might be really possible that there are a bunch of use cases that can use the heritage that is now available on Europeana, but that we couldn't foresee now. So digitize with reuse cases in mind and know that new use cases might pop up in the future. I think that would be the question of the answer to the first question. The second question was about the building of capacity for the digitization of 3D. And I guess the question was, will this mostly be done in public institutions, or will it be subcontracted, or do they pull in private organizations? I think the simple answer is both. This is not something you can see separately. We've seen in this project as well, commercial organizations have been taken on to help digitization, to help create paradata and quality and give access. I really don't think this is something we should try and keep squarely within the public sector, but this is a collaboration between public and private, I would say.
This, I think, opens very well with your presentation.
Yes. Exactly.
So please, Jolan, 10 minutes.
Okay, so now I have 10 minutes. Okay, great. Yeah, thank you. I mean, I'm very honored to be able to follow all of the use cases that have been presented, because it really shows all of the expertise, all of the resources, all of the work that has gone into making these objects available on Europeana today. And we saw in Nacho's visual that the end of the visual is you make it available in Europeana. And in some sense, this is true, but I would posit that this is actually just the start of the next visual, which maybe you couldn't see on the slide, which is the start of this journey of reusability of the 3D heritage that is there. So that's mostly what I want to talk about today. As Europeana, our role is to be the stewards of the heritage that gets sent to us. We have a very humble kind of goal there, because all of the expertise, all of the actual knowledge and 3D digitization has happened in the institutions, and we are blessed by having this available in our platform. And so our role here is to make the data that gets sent to us accessible, viewable, findable, downloadable, reusable. And in that sense, we're very happy to work as the steward of what they call today the Common European Data Space for Cultural Heritage. So all of the use cases, all of the projects in EUreka3D can now say that they are part of the data space. Their data is on Europeana.eu. But how the data space is different from what we had a few years ago is that the data space for cultural heritage isn't only our platform, isn't only Europeana.eu. The EUreka3D Data Hub, for instance, is another very important and crucial part of the data space, at least in my opinion. And this is shown in the fact that Europeana shows the data on their platform, and the metadata is held by us. But if you want to access the paradata, if you want to access the raw files, if you want to get a clearer view of the objects themselves, you can find this in the Data Hub. So it's this interoperability and availability of content on different platforms that to me is really the point of the data space. Now, to put all of this a bit more in context, what we have today on Europeana is about 6,500 3D objects, which is nice. Some could say it's a lot, but we've been working since 2008. So after 16 years having only 6,500 3D objects, I think shows that we really need to focus on this more. And the EUreka3D project was a really good example of pure focus on creating not just 3D objects for the sake of digitization, but to do them qualitatively and with the eye of reuse. And you can see that in the fact that of the reusable 3D objects on Europeana, which is a lot less than 6,500, a lot of these objects are in copyright or not reusable, or are in a format that you simply can't reuse. These might actually just be JPEGs, images of an actual 3D model, but you can't find the 3D model through Europeana. So I wouldn't call this 3D reusable heritage. Of the reusable 3D in Europeana, almost every 1 in 3 objects you will see on Europeana.eu is an object created and ingested through the EUreka3D project. So created in the last 2 years and ingested literally in the past few weeks on Europeana. So this really shows the leading value, the lead that EUreka3D is taking in the 3D space for cultural heritage. And our, I'd say our goal or our duty as Europeana is to follow this lead that the EUreka3D has created. let's see where I am in my story. Good. So following this lead, we need to do on a lot of different areas. A lot of capacity has been built in EUreka3D. Partners have really gone through this digital transformation now. We've heard from Massimiliano and from Vincent about how they had to edit or work on their own digital asset management systems to make sure that they are interoperable with Europeana. So all of this capacity is really valuable and something that a lot of other cultural heritage institutions are wanting to do or are looking at today. So Europeana here comes in as a part of a network that can share this capacity with other cultural heritage institutions that want to follow this lead of the partners that are in EUreka3D. We want to develop this data space infrastructure further. The EUreka3D data hub is extremely valuable and should become one of the, I would say, guiding infrastructures for 3D in the data space. We also need to work on our own technology, on our own technical capacity, extending our own Europeana data model to allow for instance, paradata and other technical metadata for 3D is really important. And the biggest thing in my eyes is this part of reuse, of telling the stories that are inside of this heritage. I think this is where a lot of the hesitancy comes from first. It is true that if you just upload things to Europeana without the stories behind it, without the narratives, the reusability isn't exactly visible. You find some pots and shards on Europeana and you think, okay, cool, someone did this. But what is the story behind it? What is the narrative? What makes you interested and inspired in this heritage? That's what I think we have already worked on in EUreka3D and we should continue working on in the following years. So one of the great things about the fact that EUreka3D has created not just the digital twins, but the memory twins means that it gives us the possibility of exactly extracting these stories. And we have a lot of editorial that already has been published on Europeana about the story of behind Bibracte, behind the oppidum, behind the objects that are there in Europeana, the stories behind the 3D paper molds that have been digitized. Who was Ettore Serra? Why is there a paper mold of Napoleon Bonaparte? All of this context. This really inspires people to learn more about their heritage. And the value of doing this on Europeana and not on another platform is exactly this interoperability. It makes you not look at only the collection of a single institution, but you can connect it with collections of other institutions. The Pescia Paper Museum story, please go read it on Europeana. Got a bunch of blogs, but this interoperability is something that you see when you now search on Europeana. And for instance, if you search for archaeological site, there's a linked open data that will collect everything that is an archaeological site together. And if you then look at 3D, you'll not only find the EUreka3D stories, but you'll also find 3D models from other countries, other institutions that have never been put together before. They're all in their own physical collection, but on Europeana they come together and you see things next to each other that can create new connections, new stories, and new narratives. The motto of Europe is united in diversity, and I hope this is what we can show on Europeana today. Same for archaeological artifact. I am getting to the end of my talk. Okay, good. Then I'll do a long end of my talk. So to finish. Good, great. We support the results of EUreka3D by improving the frameworks that we have today, extending the Europeana data model, building capacity. For instance, the question of making this all of these efforts sustainable and green is a question that we hear from a lot of institutions and is part of our push in the network of Europeana as well. You're really not the only one that has these questions, and within Europeana we want to push this narrative forward so that we can find solutions together. The second one is highlighting the stories that are within the memory twins that have now been ingested. So that's why I say, okay, it's at the end of Nacho's visual, but this really is the start of this reusability story. And then lastly, we want to make, of course, this cultural heritage findable, accessible in the bigger web of knowledge by leveraging the linked open data that is part of the metadata. I loved in the demo of the Data Hub how you could see that you could put not only a literal in places, but references wherever you had data to put in. You could connect with the Getty vocabularies and any other linked open data vocabularies. Good. So we do this to ensure that all of the efforts create impact and stay sustainable. And I'm saying this because it links to the next presentation of John on impact and sustainability. Thank you very much.
Yes, and now we will hear from John. John is part of this project as Photoconsortium. However, he is also operations manager at Top Photo, that is a super important UK photographic and press agency. So, John, the floor is yours. 10 minutes, huh?
Yeah, you tell me, Valentina, when I'm running out of time. So, I'm John Balean. I was consulted with Photoconsortium to do the impact assessment. Impact shouldn't be like this. Impact, so we're using the Europeana impact assessment playbook. My thanks to Europeana for all the help they did, the workshops. It's very useful. The big impact thing that I learned from doing the impact workshops was actually that impact is not really about the numbers. I mean, we could put 6,000 or we could put 1 million up, we could reach 10 people, we could reach 10 million people. But what impact really is this behavioral change. You have to change, whether you've got technology or something, people have to use this and change their workflows and methodologies. And that's where the impact really comes from this project. You know, us doing something that can be replicated, followed, and that will have an impact in that business and change in the way we do things. So, starting with the why, Marinos has already talked about the muses, the goddesses of artistic inspiration. Also Mnemosyne, who is the titaness, should I say, of memory, not just our individual memory, but collective memory. And together we have the museum, as he said. The museum is not just a word. It is not a building. It is not the things that are in the building. It is the memory of artistic inspiration. And this is the why. And something that hasn't been mentioned so far is that we had an advisory board to EUreka3D. And those four experts in the field of 3D also confirmed that the why is where we should all start. And we've all already mentioned several times about the why. This is the memory. And also the memory is recorded today. The 3D models we are doing today, we have to think that these will also last for a long time. So we're capturing the objects as we see them today for the future. So the landscape, where were we at the start of this project? It was a fairly barren place, the 3D, not much was going on. It was a little bit Wild West. People were scanning a bit here and there. There was an EU recommendation that all cultural heritage landmark sites at risk should be digitized in 3D by 2030. That's quite an ambitious target, but that's what we were working to. We had little standards, but we had the VG study. So we have a template to work from. We started the project with this sort of built-in impact. I was part of that. The agreement also mentioned a lot of these impact areas that we were going to look at. Best practice for digitization was one of the first things. We had our content partners, and we wanted them to use the VG study to create this best practice for high quality, consistent 3D digitization outputs. So that was sort of the goal. And it flagged up some challenges quite early on. One of them was paradata. There was a little knowledge about what paradata was, how you captured it, how you stored it, how you disseminated it to other people. And this sort of realization, even within our small case study, you know, our content partners were the stakeholders for this, it was clear that this was also an issue much broader. And also our advisory board mentioned this. So we did webinar series and the dissemination, a big dissemination effort on paradata. And this is what you need to take away with you, that paradata is very important. You need to record it for the memory. The other thing that we found was that the actual VG study itself was quite complex. I mean, it goes into a lot of detail. The scenarios are very, you know, if you're doing something underwater and, this was not a typical scenario for a lot of CHIs. So we wanted to look at sort of a typical new person coming into digitization, 3D digitization, to make it a little bit simple and easier. And of course, we came up with the simplification guide, which took quite a bit of work to do. And then the other part of the workflow is the pilot. So that's been explained about what the pilot is, but it's essentially is the CHIs, it's a barrier to them to get, we can do the 3D digitization, but how can we display it? Do we use, Sketchfab? And we've already talked about the problems of that. So this is an access. We can use the pilot, the data hub, to be able to get material available to disseminate without having to build these infrastructures in our local building. And it must be said that it's not just for 3D, but this can also be used for 2D assets and other assets. And the pilot also flags some challenges. So formats is one. There's a lot of different 3D formats. That's something that we probably haven't talked about, but we have talked about the visualizers and viewers. And again, there's lots of different viewers, and that was unanticipated. It wasn't in our project, but we looked at that. So that was basically the change pathway. Best practice for the digitization, a system to be able to store it, and then you can disseminate your information from there. Creating the best sort of workflow practice. And then the second part was, once we've got that flow, we need to be able to disseminate a capacity builder, tell it to everybody else, this is the way you digitize, this is how it can be done, replicate this model to the stakeholders of 3D. And the CHIs are not our only sort of stakeholders in this. The other stakeholders, of course, so yes, so in the dissemination, sorry, I wanted to mention one of the learning things that we are in capacity was actually partnering with the ICA and other organizations to expand your network is massive. The ICA series, the ICA is the International Council of Archives, and when we did our first webinar, I was just amazed. There was, hello from the US Virgin Islands. I mean, how can you reach the US Virgin Islands with our normal network? It's not possible. So finding all of those networks to get the biggest reach to talk about the project was actually quite invaluable. And then the stakeholders, as I said, the users of 3D model, this is the last sort of impact area, is that we put all of these 3D models into Europeana or other parts. How can they be used? What is the interest? So we looked at education. This is the website of the Lambusa boat, for example, which has lots of educational games and other parts to be interactive. Bibracte did a lot of educational workshops as well. Tourism, environmental concerns, the fact that tourists have actually been walking on sites was an interesting wearing them down. So Marinas and C2 had a very interesting case study of a village which they digitized to almost allow people to be in the village without visiting the village. But of course, it had almost the opposite effect, that by seeing the amazing village, they actually wanted to go to this village, which almost reverses. So you have to be aware of the impacts, the opposite impacts that it might. Creative industries, I don't think we've pushed really hard into the creative industries, but of course, we've talked about gaming, and I think this is really where the sustainability comes in, and the future of 3D and XR, because that will be looking much more in depth at the usages of the users of these 3D models, now that we've got them there. Augmented reality, all of those extra, this cross-reality stuff to make it very interesting. So that's basically the the essence of the project. I think the impact has been good. I think we've met these challenges. We've addressed them as we went along. And we're looking forward to XR, where we've got the data hub ready for people to come in to use. We've got the infrastructure. We have now a competence center really for 3D to help with how you scan it, quality recommendations, all of the considerations that you have to do. So the standards are now there really. We just have to adopt them, make sure that we use them, and we are going to be in a good place for the future. And hopefully we can meet that EU recommendation target. Thank you very much.